Me and you, we have a lot to talk about. What's up guys and welcome to Movie Dissect. The most anticipated movie of the year is Tenet, already the 11th movie by Christopher Nolan. And it's out in the cinemas, by the way, at least in some parts of the world. Is it a masterpiece? Well, you'll have to see for yourself. But I can assure you that this was a really mind-boggling movie that kept us up a few nights. And did you hear that? That's just our spoiler alert. Because do not, and I repeat, do not watch this video if you haven't seen the movie or if you want to figure out the movie for yourself. Otherwise, let's keep going. Okay guys, here's the first huge thing we have to talk about. It's the inspiration for the movie. The inspiration for the movie was a square. It's not the Madison Square, it's not the Grand Square, it's something a bit more complicated, which is called the Sator Square. And let me show it to you first and already spoil to you that in one way or another, either raw of the square or each word of the square will appear in the movie. Let's talk about the title. In the Sator Square, you can see Tenet vertically as well as horizontally in the middle, which forms a cross. Tenet means dogma or principle. And in the movie, Tenet is the organization that recruits our protagonist, John David Washington, to prevent a catastrophe. The square was found in Pompeii, a city that was destroyed in 79 after Christ, in the outburst of the Vesuvius. And since then, it has intrigued many scientists. Note that the square is actually a palindrome, which means that you can read each word in the square from left to right as well from right to left. So if you do so for Sator and opera, then you get arepo and rotos in the last two rows. Many scholars have tried to translate the palindrome and it has a lot of different explanations, but basically it means the man who throws the seeds will harvest through the season. And if you want to know more, make sure to check Wikipedia. So why has Nolan chosen this title? As we already spoiled for you, each word will come back in the movie, and more specifically a number of characters will bear the name of each word from the square. That guy is Sator, the free haven company is Rotas, and the forger is Arepo. So the Sator Square was definitely on Christopher Nolan's mind when writing the script. And in that context, it's not really a coincidence that a few important scenes take place near Pompeii. Now look at the Sator Square again and keep the outer consonants of the square. S-T-R-N. It just suggests the name Saturn. This is the Roman god who is associated with the Greek Titan son Kronos. And Kronos is seen as a personification of time, you know? And time is essence in Tenet. Essence. If there's one thing we know about Christopher Nolan, is that he is obsessed with time. And all the films he made, like Dunkirk and Interstellar and Inception, they all prove that, you know? Here though, the idea is that the Sator Square could function like a clock, with the T's as 12, 3, 6 and 9 o'clock. But there is more. The really smart people have translated the letters in the Sator Square through the old Greek alphabet to numbers. Already in the 16th century, an all-round artist, Albrecht Dürer, associated another square, 4x4, with numbers, with time. And if you look at his engraving Melancholia, then you can see an hourglass next to the square. Guys, the next thing we have to talk about is me giving you a small lesson of physics here. The thing with any physics law is that it could be played in time reverse. So take me throwing a stone in the air, and then if you play this footage in reverse, it will still look physically possible. Now, see, there's one exception to that, and this is the second law of thermodynamics, which says that as time goes forward, the entropy or the chaos will only increase. So take this example for now. You have an ice block, and you let it be for 5 minutes in the room temperature, it will start becoming water, therefore increasing the chaos in molecules. So play this footage in reverse and it doesn't seem physically possible anymore. That's why many believe that our perception of time is actually connected to this law, as the time will keep going forward, the chaos will only keep increasing. So what would happen if you could actually decrease the amount of entropy or the chaos as time goes forward? That is the same question actually that James Clerk Maxwell has asked himself when he was coming up with his theoretical experiment. What Maxwell was trying to do is the following. Let's say there is one room and you have a cold cylinder and a warm cylinder, right? You separate them with a door, and the door is controlled by a small demon who is really, really selective with his particles. Then he would open the door and very selectively choose one molecule to go to the left side or to the right side. What he would do then is create a structure of only hot molecules on the right side and only cold molecules on the left side, therefore creating structure and decreasing the entropy. Therefore, if you control the entropy, you can actually essentially also control time, and this is essential in Tenet. In one scene you can actually see a schematic representation of Maxwell's demon's theoretical experiments on the board in the background. As an Inception, Christopher Nolan uses the Greek and Roman gods and their sagas. And again, if you haven't seen the movie, please do not proceed with this video. But in Tenet, the bad guy wants to collect some bombs and destroy the world because he's dying, and he wants to take everyone with him, even though he has a wife and a child. Therefore, Tenet is telling the story of the Greek titan son Kronos, who wanted to destroy his children by eating them. However, his wife Rhea is hiding one child, and that is the first clue for Kronos. There is another clue, however, that points us in that direction, as a painting by Francisco Goya, a famous Spanish painter, gets quite an important role in this film. And the painting is Saturn or Kronos devouring his son. Sator is Kronos, who wants to kill his own son by literally telling his wife, "I don't want my son to live in a world that ends." And ladies and gentlemen, since it seems like Christopher Nolan was in the mood to throw us some Easter eggs, I present to you the third clue. When our guy threatens the protagonist, he says that he's going to castrate him, which is interesting because Kronos was also notoriously known for castrating his own father. And I can perfectly picture Christopher Nolan going to the Brana and saying, "This is how you're going to play the character." And indeed, he plays him like a madman that's ready to tear anyone apart. In one of the scenes, he even calls himself a god. So he sees himself as Kronos, the god of time. He's constantly checking his heartbeat throughout the movie, and this is because he wants to end the world at a specific moment of time. And of course, throughout the movie, he's just messing with time all the time. Nolan's triangle, the protagonist, Cat, and Sator, is something we've seen in many stories before. But at the first glance, just like the Inception, it seems like the story has been inspired by James Bond movies, which is not surprising because Christopher Nolan has admitted multiple times that he's been a James Bond movie fan. But in particular, the triangle plot seems to come from the Thunderball or Never Say Never Again. In that movie, James Bond is trying to get in touch with the bad guy who is located on the yacht through his beautiful girlfriend. And that's exactly what the protagonist is doing here through Cat. But in the reflection, we also see The Night Manager by John Le Carré. In that story, the British soldier is using the beautiful girlfriend of a weapon lord, Rupert, to infiltrate his organization. In the book, Rupert's base is a luxury yacht. And who played the role of a girlfriend? Elizabeth Bickey, who played Kat in Tenet. Coincidence? I think not. But you can also see the Tenet triangle as a rotation of the Othello triangle. What if Lago was in the position of Othello, and Othello had to save Desdemona from Lago? But maybe Nolan even chose Branagh because he was such a great Lago in Oliver Parker's film version of the Shakespeare play. And also because he played such a great Russian villain in a Jack Ryan movie. Anyway, there are more mirror images to come. Let's move over to the plot. It's complicated but not incomprehensible. In short, in the future, our grandchildren are not happy with us because of what we did with the Earth. So they want to reverse everything and in that way destroy us, which in the film is called the grandfather paradox. Their main physicist had a machine which is called the algorithm to reverse entropy or time. But she got cold feet at the last stage. She divided the machine in 9 parts and they were hidden in nuclear facilities. Our grandfathers contacted Sator to reassemble the algorithm and paid him with inverted gold. In the beginning of the film, he only needs one more part. But But then there is Tenet to sabotage him. Tenet is an organization created in the future by the protagonist. He recruited Neil and himself to prevent Sator from destroying the world by means of a temporal pincer, an attack from the present and the future at the same time. Neil functions as the backup of the protagonist, while Sator is his own backup. In the beginning, Neil saves the protagonist from being killed, and in the end, his inverted self is killed after. Oh yes, there are 3 temporal gates or portals. One in Oslo, one in Tallinn, and one in Siberia. Maybe there are more, but there is no mention in the film or others. Let's talk about the ecological theme in the movie. The protagonist is actually associated with wind energy because he was reborn at a windmill at the sea, while the antagonist is associated with nuclear energy. When we see the young Sator for the first time, he's actually in the dark and some sort of a coal black area. It's this irony that the future generation is actually recruiting someone like Sator and not the Greenpeace guy. Like in Memento, Tenet actually takes the form of a hairpin, which is a nice visual touch for a film about an attack by means of the temporal pincer. On the time scale, because it's a hair pincer, the middle of the movie is actually the end, and the start and the end of the movie are the beginnings of the timeline, which will meet in the middle somehow. If we give each sequence a name linked to the location, we get something like this for the first part of the movie. 1 Kiev, 2 Mumbai, 3 London/Vietnam, 4 Oslo, 5 Italy, 6 Tallinn. And for the second part, we got more or less the reverse structure because we go back in time. So, 7 Tallinn 2, 8 Oslo 2, 9 Siberia/Vietnam 2, and 10 London 2. You can also see it almost like an hourglass structure. An interesting thing is that if we name the sequences in the first half of the film according to the themes or characters, we get this. 1 Opera, 2 Tenet, 3 Arpo, 4 Rotas, 5 Sator. We get all the words of the Sator square. So, but what's the point of all of this? Let's see. What if Neil was not recruited by the protagonist? Then the protagonist would have been killed by the inverted bullet. Then Sator, our bad character, would get the last part of the algorithm, and boom, the end of it. Now, in the scene with the Batman's butler, we get to hear that on the same day as the attack on the opera house, there was an explosion in Siberia. So was this the end of the world? No, because the protagonist and Neil, they actually recuperated the last part of the algorithm right before the explosion. But hold on, by being in the opera house sequence, the protagonist has already sabotaged Sator? Yes, because now he can go back in time and years from now he can organize Tenet and recruit Neil. It seems like the chicken and the egg. What was first, the cause or the effect? It doesn't matter, and it's a paradox. But it's essential for Tenet. Because the whole principle of Tenet is some kind of predestination. History was already set before anything happened. Like Neil says, what happened, happened. And later on the protagonist says, but it's not a reason for doing nothing. Whatever any character says, the outcome will be the same. Sator has already lost from the very beginning. What is our movie dissects interpretation of Tenet? Christopher Nolan presents time as something flexible, but at the end, he still presents it as if the outcome is fixed, determined. You can do whatever, you can travel back in time, you can manipulate time, but again, the outcome, the end outcome, is there already. Even the palindrome, the Sator square, illustrates the same. You can start from left to right, you can read it from right to left, but at the end you'll be reading the same word, which is Tenet, which means the end is already determined. Now, does Nolan really believe that the end is predetermined? We don't know. But anyway, we know that our ancestors believed that when they were making the Sator palindrome. They also believed that the time was this raging monster personified by Cronus, who actually at the end does not win. Nolan has translated this to cinema within the context of history, of fiction films. Everything in this movie is the reinvention of what we've seen in the film or stories before, from James Bond movies to Shakespeare. And in the same breath, he reinvents the perception of time as we know it, with a satyr as a villain who sabotages our linear perception of time and who thinks he's a god because he has the power over time. But there is a greater god, the director. In the end, fiction cinema is the best example of predestination. You know, like anything, literally anything can happen over the course of 2 hours, but any movie will already have a fixed outcome. In the end, you can say that Tenet is about the god of movies, the director, who decides everything about when and how and who, and you, as a spectator, cannot intervene. Tenet is like the opposite of a documentary. So that makes us guess that maybe, just maybe, next Christopher Nolan's movie will be something where the outcome is not fixed. Tenet is an illustration of what Hitchcock said. In the feature film, the director is God. In a documentary, the God is the director. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment section below and we'll be really glad to answer them. If you like the video, like. If you really like the video, subscribe and share it with your friends. I'm Bolo, this is Movie Dissect, out for now. See you in the next one. Peace.